everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly Sports History for October 3rd, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Saturday edition of the podcast of Red October Saturday. More on that in a minute. Let's get into some housekeeping. Follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont at Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram, at Philly Jimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. If you're enjoying it, our views and listenerships have been going through the roof the past month. Tell somebody. They might like it too. If you're enjoying it, they will too. But be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. That is at Jimbo_Mont and spread the word. If you want any information on the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremony in November, all of that is in the description. Ticket information, the list of the inductees with some bios, all of that's there. I keep saying and teasing, it's coming. There is a project I'm working on, so stay tuned for that. And I missed this yesterday in all the Red October excitement. Missed our October check-in for accountability for the health and weight loss journey. I did put on a pound over the past month, but I was very consistent with my weightlifting and everything. So I think the 50 pounds was a bit aggressive, but I am down 23 pounds since January. Things are fitting better. Been consistent with my workouts, so holding myself accountable with you guys, and if you're along the journey as well, holding yourself accountable. And it's about to enter the tough season, to be completely honest. So just want to remain consistent with things throughout the month of October, heading into the holidays. But I think, like I said, I think 50 was a bit aggressive. It's a slower process, full of ups and downs. It hasn't been linear, but it is the beginning of the month, and I wanted to make sure holding myself, and if you're following along, holding you accountable for your journey. All right, let's get into the game. First, let's start with a recap of yesterday's question of the day. I asked you, how many games do you think this series is going to go? And surprisingly, 55% of you think it's going to go 3 or 4 games. I'm not so sure. I'll go into my prediction here in a minute. Thank you, as always, for participating in the question of the day. We will have another one later in the show. And as I'm sure you can guess, you probably already know what the question of the day is going to be. Some quick news and notes first for this series. Sanchez is going to pitch Game 2. Rob Thompson announced that. And honestly, I think that's the right call. And I know yesterday I said maybe he should wait to see how today plays out. But I think for a prep standpoint and getting both pitchers in the right mindset, that's the right decision to make the call now. And I also agree and think it's the right decision to start Sanchez in Game 2. At this point, you are in a World Series or bust situation. So you got to set things up and get your players in the right position. As Andy Reid used to always say, got to put the players in the position to make the plays. And I think putting Sanchez in Game 2 at home with the way he's pitched at home, that's the way to go. And Nola is, I'm sure they had a conversation about it, but Nola is the consummate professional team player and knows that this is about the World Series. This is not about ego or anything like that. And I do think it's the right call. All right, so let's look at this series. And first and foremost, throw anything that happened in the regular season out the window. If this was Milwaukee, I think you could look at the trends and the history and what happened during the regular season. But this is Phillies Mets. I don't think any of that matters. These teams absolutely hate each other. No question. I think the fan bases hate each other. They call us scumbags. We call them scumbags. This is, you could make the case, and I know the NFL is different, but you could certainly make the case that the Mets are more hated than the Cowboys. And especially this weekend, 100%. I think if the Cowboys played the Mets, everybody in Philadelphia would root for the Cowboys, believe it or not. So as we look at this and throwing everything out the window, I still think the only team that can beat the Phillies is the Phillies. And like the song by Lit goes, they are their own worst enemy. And if the bullpen goes cold, the bats go cold, the starting pitchers can't hit their spots, the Phillies will lose. It doesn't matter who they're playing. They could be playing, and we've seen it, the White Sox or the Marlins or whoever. They are their own worst enemy. They are the only team that can beat themselves. And I firmly believe that. I think this team, top to bottom, on paper, is much better than the Mets. I think you could make the argument at all of the key positions they're better. I think you could make the argument with mindset, mentality, all of that. They're a better team. But it's the Mets. It's a division rivalry. On paper, Philly should win this in 3 games. This is a division rivalry, so it will not be easy. First time they've played each other in the postseason. Only the second time ever they've made the postseason in the same year. Part of that is due to the wild card not expanded until 94, but this, again, I keep going back to this. This series should go 3 or 4 games. No problem, no questions asked. But first of all, it's division. Second of all, this is Philly. Do we ever do anything easy? 2008, I mean, when we won the World Series, we had to wait 3 days or whatever it was in between the rain out and all of that stuff. So nothing is ever easy for us. This series is going to be no different. The Mets know the Phillies. These teams are so familiar with each other. That's why I say you throw matchups and analytics and all that out the window. They know what is coming, and that goes for both sides. So throw any kind of logic out the window. To me, 2 players are going to be key to this series. Castellanos on offense, he needs to continue to do and be consistent the way he has been throughout the season. And he's shown that he's very streaky in the postseason. I think he's going to be okay. All of these guys have a different mindset, different mentality than they have in the past 2 seasons. But Castellanos is going to be key. And then Ranger Suarez, I think, is the wild card here. If Ranger can come out, no matter what happens the first 3 games, and give us 5 solid innings, be close to where he was in previous postseasons as well as where he was earlier in the season, I think the Phillies are okay. And that's because the bullpen should be rested. Between Wheeler, Sanchez, and Nola, they should give you 6-7 innings the first 3 games. So I only need 5 solid innings out of Ranger, and that's the key. And if you've been listening or watching me for a while now, last year it was all about the Ranger Suarez game. They always seem, but the past 2 seasons, to win the Ranger Suarez game, and I don't think that's going to be any different this year. They're going to need to win the Ranger Suarez game. And Castellanos, like I said, needs to stay hot. Yes, the Mets have a ton of momentum. However, if you look at that Brewers series as a closer look, a couple mistakes by the Brewers is what helped the Mets win Game 1. Obviously, the Brewers won Game 2, and the Mets were thoroughly outplayed for the most 8 1/3 or whatever it was innings in that Game 3. It was just a big hit by Pete Alonso. So, yes, they have the momentum, but it's not like they're coming in gangbusters. If you remember the Phillies when they were the wild card, they were silent that first 8 innings of that first game in St. Louis. Then they exploded in the 9th and came out and played well in that next game to clinch it. The Mets had to go 3 games, and I think that's going to be huge because of the way the rotation is going to set up. Phillies had the bye. Everybody talks about the bye not being good for the division winners. This team is different. I think because they're a veteran team, because they could use it to rest up and be ready, I think they're going to play well and come out and be ready. My only concern today is that Zach Wheeler gets off to a slow start because of how regimented he is and having the extra days. But I would be shocked if there was not anything in place to get him sort of simulated and everything, keep him as much in his routine as possible. So who's going to step up for the Phils too? I mean, they're not going to pitch to Bryce. And somebody else is going to need to step up besides the big guys like Stott, Marsh, Austin Hayes, Johan Rojas. Somebody's going to have to step up and do something offensively. We've seen it in the past. We've seen Marsh get hot. We've seen Stott with some big hits. So one of those guys are going to have to step up. These teams, I keep going back to this. These teams hate each other, and I think that's what's going to make this fun. It won't be easy, but it's going to be a fun weekend, and who knows what's going to happen. And the intangibles, yes, like I said, the Mets have the momentum, but it's okay. I mean, in looking at the numbers, they were 7-6 against each other this year. 3 of those losses were when Taijuan Walker was pitching, and I think you can't overstate that enough because of how bad Taijuan Walker was. Grimace, Webster defines grimace as an ugly, twisted expression expressing disgust from pain or wry amusement. And if you don't know, Grimace came out and threw the first pitch for the Mets. I think it was against the Marlins, and that's when they kind of started their thing. So the Mets have adopted Grimace. And I will stand on it and die on this hill. Grimace is the worst McDonald's character ever. So Webster defines it as an ugly, twisted expression expressing disgust from pain or wry amusement. Let's bring the pain this weekend, Philly. Let's make it painful for the Mets. Let's end this stupid Grimace thing. Let's get it done and over with. The Phillies will win this series. I'm saying it's going 5 games. It's certainly not going to be easy. And the difference in this game is going to, or this series is going to be Zach Wheeler. You get him in 2 games, and that's going to be huge. And both of those starts are going to be at home. You got, hopefully Chase Utley makes an appearance because of how much he hates the Mets. I would love to see him throw out a first pitch. This is the Mets, man. Muck the Fets. This is a rivalry game. And I mean, I can think back to all the Phillies Mets games I've been to. Got my wife getting thrown out for not realizing we were saying Muck the Fets. All of this crazy stuff. It's the Mets. Let's end this stupid Grimace thing. Phils win this series in 5. They move on to the NLCS. This team's not ready to be done yet. This is World Series or bust. That's the pick. Do whatever you want with it, but there's no way the Phillies lose this series. And I'm telling you, name me a worse character from McDonald's than Grimace. You can't do it. Maybe the little chicken nugget guys, but they were so popular back in the day. Not going to put Wendy over Grimace. Definitely not going to put the Hamburglar or Mayor McCheese over him. So tell me a worse McDonald's character than Grimace. You can't do it. Phillies in 5. Zach Wheeler's the difference. We move on to the NLCS, and it's going to be an epic showdown with either the Dodgers or the Padres. Let's go. But that leads to today's question of the day. Who do you got? Phillies or Mets? Very simple. 267-495-8531. That'll get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off your chest. We'll get it out here. And truthfully, bonus question of the day. Name me a character worse than Grimace from McDonald's land. You can't do it. That's why. There is not a character worse than Grimace. And truthfully, their regular mascot, Mr. Met, is definitely not a top-level mascot either. So let's end this charade, put the Mets, make them Met. That's what they're going to do, and let's move on to the NLCS. Go to phillygoat.com today. They got you covered for all your Red October needs. You want to get an I Scuff Mrs. Met shirt? They got it. Go Phils with all the different Phils? They got it. The fans, they got them. Holy Schmidt, they got it. Believe. Just go check out their collection. Like, I can't even go through all of the shirts because we'd be here all day. Go to phillygoat.com. Use that promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off your order and get geared up for Red October. And then check out my boys at the Clashing Conferences podcast. I told you about the OGs in the NFC East earlier in the week. Check out the new baseball episode that dropped yesterday. It's a good one. Mike and Lewis going at it. And I'm telling you, can somebody tell me a worse McDonald's? I keep going back to that. The whole Grimace thing is stupid. It's worse than Dancing on My Own. So give me a worse character than Grimace. But go check out my boys over at the Clashing Conferences podcast. All right, it is the Eagles bye week, and I've been trying to infuse some of that new Philly mentality into the Eagles coverage this week. Yesterday we talked about the play of Quinyon Mitchell, the trash talk, and how well he's played. Saquon Barkley has been as advertised this year, and thank God for Saquon Barkley, because the Eagles could be 0-4 if it wasn't for Saquon. third in the league in rushing right now, 435 yards, averaging 6 yards per carry, which still blows my mind why they're not giving. We're going to remain positive, but it still blows my mind why they're not giving him more carries early in the game. Added 12 catches for 85 yards, 5 total touchdowns, and has been one of the few bright spots on the offense. Needs to keep it up, especially as they work Devontae and AJ back into it. But again, with this whole new Philly mentality, hashtag new Philly, trying to look at the positives and the bright spots, and Saquon Barkley certainly has been as advertised for the Phillies. News out of Sixers camp, Jarrett McCain continues to impress everybody who's been talking about him. It's still way early. They haven't played any preseason games, and it's really just practice. We know about practice. We're not going to sit here and talk about practice. But early indications are Jarrett McCain has been impressing everybody with his toughness. He's willing to learn. And I think anything you can get out of him as a contribution this year is a bonus, especially on a team that has such high aspirations. So I enjoy and like hearing that Jarrett McCain is progressing nicely throughout camp. Flyers roster is starting to take shape. Oliver Bonk and Denver Barkey were sent back to Ottawa in the OHL, and I think that's good for them. Give them time to develop one more year in one of the better spots in the OHL. Looks like Jet Luchenko, the first-round pick this year, is going to make the team. It's going to be fun, man. Next stop, next week in Vancouver, and we'll have a little bit of a Flyers season preview next week, so stay tuned for that. Union in Columbus tonight at 7:30. Huge game for them. It would be short. I mean, all of them, I guess, at this point are must-win. But this is a must-win for their playoff hopes. They are currently 10th outside looking in. 3 points here would be huge, and it's going to be tough. We know they've played Columbus a couple times recently between the Leagues Cup and then MLS play. They're in the 2 seed. They're battling for playoff position too, so they're going to come to play. But Union need to stay hot, pick up where they were in the second half earlier this week. But the season's winding down and the opportunities are dwindling. So Union need to get it together tonight. I would be remiss if I did not mention this. My Temple Owls play today up in Connecticut. Usually they own Connecticut. Will they get win number 2 today? I doubt it. As of last night, they were 17.5-point dogs. I'll take Temple with the points, though. Why not? Live a little dangerously today. All right, so today I did call an audible because I'm trying to keep the vibes positive as we head into this big game against the Mets. I was going to go back to 1950, Game 2 of the World Series, but the Phillies lost that game, so I'm like, let's not talk about that. Instead, good vibes only. We're going to go back to 2008 today. And on this day in 2008, the Phillies sent Joe Blanton, Heavy B himself, to the mound, leading the NLDS 2-1, looking to close out the Brewers after that epic game with Victorino hitting the grand slam. Jimmy Rollins got it started early, led off the game with a home run off of Jeff Suppan. In the third, Pat Burrell hit a 3-run shot. Then Jason Worth went back-to-back with him with a solo shot, and the Phillies were rolling. Pat Burrell added another one in the 6th. Heavy B was great. 6 innings, 7 strikeouts, allowed 1 run, and the Phillies advanced to the NLCS for the first time since 1993. And for the record, Pat Burrell was the second Philly player to hit 2 home runs in a clinching game in the postseason. The other one, Lenny Dykstra, all the way back in 1993. But on this day, back in 2008, Phillies beat the Brewers to move on to the NLCS for the first time since 1993. And we all know how that game or that season ended up playing out for the Phillies. All right, so let's continue now with some Red October memories. And this one, not going to go back far for this one. We're going to go back to 2022 and Game 3 of the NLDS. And the series was tied 1 game apiece with the Braves. We had that epic game in Atlanta, Game 1, where the Phillies seemingly stole it had some good plays in the defense, and then the Braves came back, won game 2. So it was a pivotal game here in Philly. This game was a 4:30 p.m. start on a Friday. The only reason I bring that up is because the story with this one is great. Took a half day at work to had the kids taken care of with the wife, and we decided to go to McGurk's in Fort Washington to watch the game. Got a seat outside. Ended up sitting next to some construction workers who were doing work on Bethlehem Pike. They came in to watch the game after work. She decided to teach these guys spirit fingers, snapping whenever the guys came up. Well, they did it, and it gets better from there. So it was Nola versus Strider. This is where the legend, I feel, of playoff Nola was born. Stott hit a 2-run double in the third. Schwarber was intentionally walked to face Rhys Hoskins. Cue the spirit snapping. All these dudes at the bar were spirit snapping. Hoskins at that point felt some type of way, as well he should, intentionally walking Schwarber to face him. But at that point, he was 1 for 19, 7 strikeouts in the postseason. First pitch, slammed a 3-run shot, spiked his bat. The crowd went wild, and at that point, you knew there was no way the Phillies were losing that game. I'd like to think it was thanks to the spirit snapping that the construction workers and everybody else in the bar was doing. Strider was out. JT came up, hit a single. Then Bryce hit the first pitch he saw over the fence. All of a sudden, the Phils are up 6-0. Spirit snapping was going on, and that was pretty much the nail in the coffin that game for the Braves. Bryce added an RBI double in the 6th. Nick Castellanos added a 2-run single. Nola was great. 6 innings pitched, 6 strikeouts, gave up 1 run. Phillies were up 2-1. And at that point, it was just a matter of finishing out the series and moving on to the NLCS. They closed it out the next day. That was the game JT hit the inside the park home run, and the Phillies were rolling. And before anybody says anything, because I know what some people are thinking, muck the Feds. But our Red October, great game in Philly postseason history. The Phillies beat the Braves 9-1 in Game 3 of the 2022 NLDS. Rhys Hoskins got it started with the bat spike, got a lot of frustration out on that, and everybody at McGurk's in Fort Washington was doing the spirit snapping. On this day in 2008, Phillies beat the Brewers 6-2 in Game 4 of the 2008 NLDS to move on to the NLCS. Pat Burrell hit 2 home runs, becoming only the second Philly to hit 2 home runs in a clinching postseason game. The other one was Lenny Dykstra back in 1993. Will the Owls win? I don't know. But we'll look forward to that Union matchup. Continue to see how the Flyers roster shakes out. Hopefully Jarrett McCain continues to impress at Sixers camp. But really, this is all about Phillies and Mets. Phillies in 5. That's what I'm saying. What do you think? 267-495-8531. That'll get you in. Let me know your thoughts on that. Who's the worst McDonald's character? All of that is fair game. Let's have some fun on an NLDS Saturday. Phils Mets 4:08 Eastern Time. Let's go, Phils. Muck the Fets, Muck Grimace, and Muck Mr. and Mrs. Met. All of them. Forget them all. I hate the Mets. I really, really hate the Mets. I take all the stuff I've ever said about the Braves being my most bitter rival in baseball. It's the Mets. It's always been the Mets. Probably always will be the Mets. So you know what? Let's go end this little silly dream they're on. Let's go out, set the tone early. Schwarber with a Schwar bomb to start the game off. Fills up 1-0. Crowd goes wild, and Grimace can go back to McDonald's land and eat some French fries. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for October 5th, 2024. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Saturday. And until next time, Grimace is the worst McDonald's character.